she claims she had sex with Prince Andrew on 3 occasions, one of which was at a multiple orgy with Andrew and Epstein on an island involving Giuffre and, she thinks, 6 to 7 other young girls, some of them she believed underage, most of whom did not have a great command of English. That's from the book. I need to say, Prince Andrew denies all these allegations, but that's, my friend, the level of potential criminality at which we find ourselves. He's also in trouble, just straightforward, with police forces. Is it right that he instructed one of his protection team to try and dig up dirt on Giuffre? That's an offence this side of the water. Is it right that he shared her what they call social security number, we would call it national insurance number, with that police officer? Because that's an offence the other side of the Atlantic, with possibly 15 years in jail if you share someone's SS or social security number. That's made worse yesterday by one of the newspapers, the Mail on Sunday, about this idea of a smear campaign against Miss Giuffre, who, remember, claimed she was trafficked by paedophile Jeffrey Epstein and abused by Prince Andrew when she was just 17. In one email, Andrew tells an aide he'd given her personal details, as I say, to one of the protection officers or prot officers. So let's go back briefly to that now infamous interview in 2019 with journalist Emily Maitlis.
One of Epstein's accusers, Virginia Roberts, has made allegations against you. She says she met you in 2001. She says she dined with you, danced with you at Tramp nightclub in London. She went on to have sex with you in a house in Belgravia belonging to Ghislaine Maxwell, your friend. Your response?
I have no recollection of ever meeting this lady. None whatsoever.
You don't remember meeting her?
No.
Rewatching it, I went back into that frame of mind, and I remember thinking at that point, oh, I'm losing this conversation. I don't understand. Is he saying the photo? Just say it. If you think the photographs are fake, tell me it's a fake.
Yeah.
If you think that somebody has literally digitally enhanced a hand, say that. But he kind of was throwing everything at it in the hope that I'd change tack or stop asking about it, and instead of stopping, I was like, no, I don't understand. Was that you? Why wouldn't it have been you? Why
what possible explanation do you think there could be? Yeah.
Your friend, the woman you've described as your friend, Ghislaine Maxwell, is in the back of the photo. So how on earth would she be in the back of the photo in her own house, but it wouldn't be you, or it wouldn't be you there, or you wouldn't be in those clothes, or what's somebody done to your hand? None of it made sense.
No.
Yeah. The other thing, actually, just to go back, was early on in the interview when I asked him if he'd noticed activity around Epstein, and he says, no, I was a patron of the NSPCC's Full Stop campaign. I would have known about child abuse.
That's
I would
right,
have seen it. And so you're kind of reminded that this was a man who'd been patron of a child abuse charity and cause. And yet he's described the Manhattan townhouse as like a railway station. Right? People coming and going the whole time. That's not normal.
No.
If people are coming and going the whole time, if somebody's home is a railway station, what on earth's going on?
Yeah.
Right?
And also to mention, I'd forgotten the NSPCC thing, to mention that is interesting as well, isn't it? Because he's saying, oh, I would be well aware of abuse, and yet failing to answer questions around abuse. You also noticed, and I think this connects to what we were speaking about last week, he told you that he'd ended the friendship in person in the November, and then it turned out from these emails that emerged last weekend that he saw him again in the February, was it February or the March of the following year. And you noticed more as well, didn't you, that what he said in that supposed conversation that he had, do we know whether he did or he didn't? We don't really know. But he said it's all about the scrutiny around me. Yeah. That was his concern, not I really need to end this friendship.
Yeah, it was quite confusing, that, because he'd been very categorical with me in the interview that the friendship ended in December 2019. And sometimes all you have to do is you have to sort of say, well, what did you say? Or what was Epstein's response? And he inadvertently told me in that interview that he thought there would be too much scrutiny on him. And I sort of came away this time realising that actually that's not the sign of somebody who says, knowing what I know about you now, I don't want to continue this friendship. Yeah. It's somebody who's thinking, I can't be seen with you. Ironically, as he was having this conversation, I mean, if he was ever having the conversation, somebody was snapping the two of them together from News of the World in Central Park, a public park in New York. So that complicated it. The weirdest thing about that email is that actually I went back through the files, the cuttings. That was made public in January of this year. in the Just Staley civil court case.
Right.
Because it was actually from the Financial Conduct Authority. They had the whole description of the words in that interview, but in that email. But what they'd actually said was it was someone in the royal household. So what happened last week was the Sun, I think the news that the Daily
nailed
Mail
that it was Prince Andrew.
Said it was Prince Andrew. And that's why all the pieces kind of come together.
And if people are losing track when you say that email, the email in which it was clear that he'd met him in February of the following year,
if I said, let's play some more soon, that email.
Yeah, I'd like to say that I've come across Prince Andrew in two jobs in my past life, and he is a very unsavoury, objectionable person. I mean, he really is.
However... hang on. In what way?
I served both in the army and in the police, so I came across him very briefly, and I knew people who knew him or worked with him or worked under him, I should say, and reports on him that always he was an unsavoury, objectionable, entitled person.
Right.
So I'm not batting for his side for that for one of those reasons. However, I feel that the media is very prejudicial in its dealings with him. Let's first of all deal with this latest allegation about the fact that he's supposed to have asked his protection officer to dig up the dirt, which is a prejudicial term anyway. Where's this allegation come from, may I ask?
Right. Well, if you look at the front page of the Times, it's all there.
No, the allegation. Well, where's the allegation come from?
Well, hang on a sec. In an email from 2011, he told Ed Parkins, the late Queen's Deputy Press Secretary, it would also seem that Virginia Giuffre has a criminal record in the United States. I've given her date of birth and social security number for investigation with a certain person, the on-duty personal protection officer.
Right.
So there's emails.
Okay, so let's deal with that. You talk about being a possible offence. I see nothing wrong in that whatsoever. It's his protection officer. If Andrew feels he is a victim, right, of a malicious allegation, which would be his version of it, right, and he wants to be protected from that malicious allegation, he's perfectly entitled to ask his protection officer to look and see if maybe she has previous convictions for making false allegations in the past.
Okay.
You see, when you use it's a pejorative term, digging up the dirt. Yeah, he maybe didn't ask to dig up the dirt. He probably asked, as a lot of defence lawyers do, they employ people to find out if people who make allegations have previously making false allegations in that arena. There's nothing wrong in him doing that.
Now, listen, Paul, I'm no expert, and you're a former police officer, etc. I think the two things are completely different, aren't they? Your personal protection officer is that's like a bodyguard, is it not? If you think that, hang on, let me finish. If you think someone if I think someone, for example, is making up malicious claims about me, I would go to a lawyer or I would go to the police. I wouldn't ask my bodyguard, who's taxpayer paid.
No, I agree. I'm not going to defend him. He shouldn't necessarily have done it. But the other thing it brings to question is why wasn't this brought up at the time? But the thing is, when you talk about being a criminal offence, I don't think that's going to hold water. Right? The argument will be used it's his protection officer, and he's entitled to ask his protection officer to look into facts that might form part of his protection. And another way in which I think the media is prejudicial towards him, the term keeps being used that Epstein was a paedophile. It's not a paedophile. A paedophile is someone who likes sex with prepubescent children. Otherwise, King Henry VIII, Nelson, Shelley, Picasso were all paedophiles, but they weren't. Epstein was a sex trafficker, probably guilty of statutory rape, a nasty character. But the way the phrase is used as paedophile all the time, and then people say, oh, Andrew will hang around with the paedophile Epstein. He wasn't a paedophile.
But hang on. Well, there's plenty of people who believe that if you're guilty of statutory rape, that you are a paedophile. It doesn't matter, but whether these people are almost at the age of consent or whether they're much younger, it's just to do with the age.
No, a paedophile is someone who likes having sex with a prepubescent girl, right? Not a 13, 14-year-old. Otherwise, as I say, Henry VIII, Nelson, many famous people in the past, Shelley, would all become paedophiles. They weren't paedophiles. At the time they had sex or even married to women that age.
Okay, so you take issue with Jeffrey Epstein being called a paedophile?
No, I take issue with your pejorative term, not you personally, but the media's pejorative terms. I think this whole story is really a bit of like nasty, like titillation, all coming down on the side to want to bash Andrew. He deserves bashing, but I think at the end of the day, this story, I think people who like the monarchy will look for a reason like probably not necessarily to side with him, but defend him to a degree. And those people who hate the monarchy will use it as a stick to beat them with. It's nothing more than that. But I do think the media is very unfair in its reporting of it.
Paul,
the term digging
all
the
right,
dirt.
Paul, I have to tell you, okay, the texters are calling you a vile man. What do you say to that?
But justify the vile. I mean, I'm not defending either of them.
It sounds a little bit like you were.
Go on, how?
Well, because
I didn't defend them. I attacked the media. There's a difference.
I find it deeply, deeply obnoxious that the Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry, gets lumped in with his idiot uncle as somehow being problematic. A military hero who has done more to point out the corruption of the British media than almost anybody else in public life, being lumped in with a bloke who has been a disgrace to the family for decades is truly, truly absurd. Actually, mentioning the Duke of Sussex, Harry and Meghan constitute massive, massive news stories as well, because they offered such a wonderful opportunity to many members of the media to paint them as, or to essentially drive pages and pages, hours and hours of journalism motivated almost entirely by the fact that the one of the most senior members of the royal family had the audacity to fall in love with a woman of colour, something that drives a coach and horses, if you pardon the pun, through much of our establishment presumptions. I've probably already said Prince Charles, have I? Yes, right, there you go. King Charles. 10 minutes after 10 is the time. So, the question that is obvious today is, has this gone far enough? The King threatened to shame Andrew by stripping him of his real titles. The Daily Mail posit that today as an exclusive. I'd say it was pretty obvious that that's what had happened. He was given the opportunity to jump before he was pushed. So Charles telling his brother that he would take decisive further action if he refused to give up the dukedom and other honours after being found to have lied repeatedly about cutting ties with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. And some of the coverage, some of the responses, including from the family of the young woman who claimed before she took her own life that she was paid significant sums of money to have sex with the men 3 times, including her family. There are claims that, or beliefs that he should have been further punished, that he should have lost his princedom. 11 minutes after 10 is the time. And what I think the obvious question is today is whether or not this has gone far enough, whether or not he should remain a prince, whether it is actually worth taking up parliamentary time to pass legislation that would involve him no longer being a prince. But the lens through which I want you to look at that question is this. Okay, why do you care? I'm not saying you shouldn't, quite the opposite. I care. I care a lot more than I expected to care. I care more about this than I have about any other royal story in 20 years, except the absolutely ludicrous targeting of Prince Harry and his wife, Meghan, for the sins of being... the sins of rejecting the ludicrous deals that his family has historically done with Fleet Street and being offered up as sacrificial lambs so they'd leave the rest of them alone. But I care about this, and I can't quite work out why. I think part of the reason I care is because of a slightly embarrassing belief in what you might call the contract. What you might call and this is embarrassing because it makes me sound hideously naive, in that in order to retain the pomp and privilege, the wealth and circumstance that the royal family maintains, hinges on, we are entitled to expect certain standards to be met in return. I don't often feel sorry for members of the royal family, but I felt very, very sorry for King Charles when Donald Trump was being given rides in a golden carriage round his garden for no reason other than to make him feel special. But I didn't feel desperately sorry for him because, of course, when they close the door at the end of the visit, they go back to being waited on hands and foot and even reportedly having a member of staff to squeeze the toothpaste onto his toothbrush every morning and every evening. So it's not exactly a life that lends itself to violins and sympathy, but there's a quid pro quo, isn't there, involved, and in return for leading these ludicrous lives of luxury and privilege, we expect from you duty. Now, I'm 53. I'm not sure I've ever used the word duty about the royal family with a straight face at any other point in my life, but I'm trying to do something that I'm about to ask you to do. I'm trying to work out why I care about this. The fate of Virginia Giuffre is particularly hideous. The poor woman who never achieved, it would seem, peace or happiness, culminating originally in a £12 million settlement funded by the late Queen and ultimately in her own suicide. And you find yourself thinking that woman was clearly exploited, although Prince Andrew denies any involvement at all. She was clearly and categorically exploited by Jeffrey Epstein and much of his clientele. So that is part of it. I have daughters. A couple of you pointed that out. David's mentioned that in a text. I don't know if that is going to be relevant to this response that I have. I don't think that it is, but it might be. Why do I care? Why do you care so much?
First of all, what is the age of consent?
Well, it depends on, we were talking about America, it depends on the state that you're in. It can be 16, 17, 18.
Right. Now, what he's done, I mean, I'm not condoning it, but it's not as bad as these gangs up in Bradford having underage sex, is it?
Well, I don't know. I think I'm not saying I'm not going to talk about the gangs. I'm talking about having sex with young girls.
Yes.
When you're in a position of huge power and influence. It's not really the same, is it? It's
I agree,
okay.
But legally, he hasn't broken any laws, only in America, because I think the age is 18. But in the UK, when she came here, in the UK and went to tramps and all that sort of thing, legally, he hasn't broken the law. She was 16 or 17.
But what about, Mark, hang on a second. I understand, I take the point that you're making, but what about these latest allegations that have come out that could end up in some kind of criminal investigation, which is allegedly asking your personal protection officers to use your money, my money, taxpayers' money, to dig up some dirt on this young woman, saying, I've got her date of birth, I've got her social security number, national insurance number, whatever. Can you do a bit of digging? That potentially is breaking the law.
I agree on that. But as regards to him having sex with these girls, they are at the right age. I can understand if it was like 10-year-olds and all that, which is obviously, very disgusting. But I agree that what he's done is wrong. But if it was brought to trial here in the UK, he said, yes, I had sex with a 16 or 17-year-old. So what?
Goodness me. Okay, look, let me read you that bit from the book, Mark, okay, which you won't have had the chance to read yet. And let me see if this changes your mind. I don't think it will, but I'm going to read it anyway. In her memoir, Nobody's Girl, due to be released on Tuesday, Miss Giuffre said that the British socialite turned sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell told her that just like Cinderella, I was going to meet a handsome prince. This is ahead of the first alleged incident in 2001. The book says it was going to be a special day. Just like Cinderella, I was going to meet a handsome prince. Her old friend Prince Andrew would be dining with us that night, and we had lots to do to get me ready. After repeating claims that she attended Tramp nightclub with the prince, where he sweated profusely, Miss Giuffre went on to allege that Andrew had sex with her at Maxwell's London home. Miss Giuffre said, guess Jenna's age, and Jenna is Virginia Giuffre. She urged the prince after she introduced me, and the Duke of York, who was then 41, guessed correctly, 17. My daughters are just a little younger than you, he told me, explaining his accuracy. Now, does that make you cringe a bit? Do you feel uneasy or not?
Yes, morally it does.
Okay.
Any full-grown man who's got children and granddaughters, morally that is wrong. But according to the law, doesn't matter. It's all hearsay against hearsay. I know it's all wrong what he's done. But as I said, the law is the law.
Explain the relationship between one of the officers involved and the person they're looking after, in this case, Prince Andrew. How does that relationship function? Morning.
Oh, well, good morning to you, Nick. Essentially, each senior royal has a team of officers that we call personal protection officers. The king has the king protection officer. They're normally very senior officer. In Andrew's case, he has had protection 24/7 since he was born. And that had continued until fairly recently, etc., etc. It is a close, trusting relationship. I didn't do it personally, but I had teams that did it, and I know the officers who did it. As far as I am concerned, they are of the highest integrity. But over the years, some of them, I have to say, it appeared to me, got sometimes too close to their principles. But that was rare. Most of them, as far as I was aware, kept a professional distance and did their job, which is to protect.
Di, did they go off to work for Prince Andrew with a song in their heart, or was it seen as one of the more tougher assignments to have him as your principal?
When I was there, he'd had two chief inspector and a team of sergeants, etc., and they had been with him for a long time. They knew him well, could deal with his tantrums, they could deal with all manner of allegations that were made, and they were down-to-earth, sensible men. They were men. I was aware there was, I think, a female sergeant who was on the team, but females in my day were relatively rare in protection. But they were selected because of their abilities on a wide range of fronts. They are highly trained, diplomatic, and can work without reference back to senior officers.
How fair is it
they were trusted.
How fair, lastly, is it to suggest, Di, then, that the former colleagues of yours, so their reputation is not sullied in any way, shape or form, formal police questioning now of Andrew must take place?
Yes, and I was lucky enough to go on Newsnight a few days after his notorious interview, and I called then to ask why the Met didn't investigate the 3 allegations she had made to them. There may have been good reasons. Some of it was that they didn't have jurisdiction. I took exception to that because a British citizen, if you traffic anyone for sex anywhere, can be held responsible. However, that put it aside. The latest information we have clearly shows that if, and I say if it's true, and if there is evidence, then he and many others in the palace should be investigated. Who knew, who did what, etc., etc. If a police officer did it, it's malfeasance in public office, breach of data protection, and so on and so forth. Very serious offences as far as I'm concerned.
It's beyond disgraceful. If there's any truth in this, I can't say there is. That has to go to criminal law in this country. That's one good thing, isn't it? I mean, we have a process, I think, that needs to be followed. How you follow it with the royal family is another question. Because, after all, there's the idea that they can somehow hide him off and sort of exile him or something, a bit like, was it James II that sort of disappeared abroad, one of them anyway. I think it spells, really, the end of the royal family as such, this, because to think that the Windsors sheltered this person in all this pomp and luxury in this fancy lodge in Windsor, how long can this go on? There's people in this country who haven't even got a home. You know, it is just ridiculous. And if Scotland, Is
the royal family something that you respect? Is it something that you feel has been tarnished by this?
As a historian myself, yes, but only in terms of history, because we've moved on so much, haven't we? In the 21st century, not in the days of William the Conqueror or, the 17th century or something, James I. Those days are behind us, and we've moved on so much in society in other fields, haven't we? So why this? Why do we cling to this so-called pomp? I really don't know. Is it just to please Donald Trump?
I don't know. Do you think? I mean, does it bother you that he's still called Prince Andrew? I understand that there are, there are legal issues involved there. It would take an act of Parliament, etc. But should he still be called Prince Andrew, in your opinion?
No. I mean, it's a nice name for a dog, Prince, isn't it? But not for someone like. If true, and I do caveat that with that. Any hint of truth, and he is just. I call him Prince Andrex and flush him away.
Okay, Prince Andrex. Do you think that this could have been handled a bit better, perhaps, either by the royal family or by Prince Andrew himself?
Well, exactly that. The absolute arrogance of the person to swan around in these fancy robes and still at that recent funeral to still be sort of cracking jokes. I mean, that's not a great look, is it, for either he or the royals themselves? I mean, William seems to have sort of given him the cold shoulder, but I think they've got to go a long way beyond that. He needs to be expelled, from this country.
The thing is, I do understand what you're saying, but I suppose until you have you have some kind of proof, because that's what we all rely on, don't we? We all rely on proof. You can't say someone is guilty until there is proof. And if he is at a royal funeral, I mean, how else should he behave, really?
Well, at least fade in the background, be in the back of the church or something, not ponce around, swan around like that, which he's very good at doing. That's one good thing he is good at doing,
So you don't think he should be Prince Andrew anymore?
Definitely not. No. What insult to the name Andrew, the flag of Scotland. If Scotland breaks away, I think they'll go Republic, and we should too.
Right, OK. You've managed to cover a lot of subjects there, Anthony. Thank you very much for that.
Karen is in Kingston. Karen, why do you care?
I think you said, why do we care? And my view is that it's such a flagrant, what he did was such a flagrant abuse of power and wealth. And that as a society, we know what he did.
I didn't
allegedly.
Even if he didn't do that, the fact that he, for me, in the world of what is known, I don't want to turn into Donald Rumsfeld, but in the known knowns, the fact that he retained contact with Epstein after he had been convicted and wrote to him saying, I can't wait to play again. I can't wait until we can play again. That makes him absolutely gross. And that's known. Actually. Yes, it's just horrible, isn't it?
Yes, and I think it's not okay to treat people as expendable objects for your own personal satisfaction. But with Andrew, he has had every advantage in life, not only with his privilege and wealth, but you look at his family and whatever you think of the monarchy, you look at the other royals, Princess Anne, King Charles, William and Kate, whatever they think, their day-to-day life is actually used to go out there and try and make life better for people and promote a better society. And despite all of that advantage and family in front of him, he has chosen to behave like that with absolutely no remorse or even acknowledgement.
So the more you care about the royal family, the more you care about this story, because he's doing so much damage to the brand, as it were, or to the firm.
Personally, I think we shouldn't have a monarchist in the next generation.
Well, then I'm even more confused as to why, because I could probably go along with that. It wouldn't keep me awake at night. So this matters because of what it tells us about powerful men and the way they can ride roughshod over the kind 100%. Of standards that the rest of us abide by. If a friend of mine was convicted of trafficking young women or paedophilia, the idea that you'd drop him a note saying can't wait to play again soon would be just, I can't even entertain the notion.
It's his background as a royal, to me, as a former prosecutor, is a massive, massive factor to make it 10 times worse. What he did is horrendous. The fact his background makes 100% worse.
Yeah, I kind of get it. I don't think we've married the two together yet, though. It's no criticism of you. I haven't done it either. That just this idea that, does it just matter because he is a very big figure? This slightly strange system that we've constructed together, it has a pinnacle. There is a family at the top of our collective tree in this country. Whether you're comfortable with that absurdity or not is immaterial. We have a society, we've had it for thousands of years, certainly in the current form, we've had it since 1066, where one family sits atop the pyramid of our shared lives and trumps everybody else on a social scale or on a not so much a financial scale anymore, but they're not badly off. And therefore, by dint of being a member of that family, you draw enormous amounts of attention to yourself and usually, I would say, do benefit from a slightly two-tier approach. And this guy has gone far enough to rip up that rule book. Maybe that's why it matters.
I think what really gets to me is that Prince Andrew has had such a privileged life. I've read everything in yesterday's papers on Sunday and the Sunday before, and I read something that, it wasn't recent, but he went on some sort of overseas trip, and he took with him, I think it was 5 or 6 personal members of staff, 2 equerries, a secretary, a valet, or something else, and one of these valets had to take, but it's almost laughable, but the person reporting it was telling the truth, an ironing board, so that he could have his trousers pressed the way he wanted them. And you just look back at all the privileges that man has got. And what really gets to me now, what's coming out, I think, is coming out, is that I feel sorry for the king And I feel sorry for the Prince of Wales and the Princess of Wales who've got that man living on their estate in that 30-bedroom house, who still treats servants like rubbish, you know, bow when I come in the room. And as for that hopeless idiot wife of his, she's hanging on to him like some sort of leech, because if he's going down the drain, she's going down the same drain.
Ex-wife.
Ex-wife, yes, I beg your pardon, ex-wife.
But Evelyn, what about, just very quickly, the caller before who said that, well, hang on a minute, he hasn't, there's no proof and he doesn't look like he's done anything illegal.
I think that caller may not have been fully informed, if I may say, because these are emails that have been printed. I don't think the Sunday newspaper would ever take a chance of printing something that on this level that wasn't true and that they could justify and prove their sources. I just don't think any British paper would do that, would they?